A very good evening, Zimbabwe. Welcome to LiveTalk, Women's Roundtable, where we look at issues affecting women. We're coming to you live from Studio 7 at the Voice of America in Washington this Thursday, September the 28th, 2023. And I'm your host, Marvelous Mhlanganyahuye. And tonight we're looking at women's participation in Zimbabwean politics and the way forward for the Southern African nation following the holding of disputed harmonized elections last month. But before we dive deep into our main topic, let's take a look at other issues. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin returns to the U.S. Thursday after wrapping up his first tour across the African continent as Defense Secretary. VOA Pentagon correspondent Carla Babb is traveling with Austin and has details from his trip.
Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin started his tour in Djibouti, home to the primary U.S. military base on the African continent. There, he met with Djiboutian leaders and the Somali president, whose forces, Austin said, had made more progress against the al-Shabaab terror group in the past year than the previous 5 years combined. Austin then turned to Kenya.
How are you?
He visited a base in Manda Bay near the Somali border, where a terrorist attack in 2020 killed 3 Americans.
Message here being very clear that the war on terror still remains top on the agenda of the American government.
The American and Kenyan defense secretaries signed a 5-year security agreement to support working together against their common terror threat. Austin also pledged $100 million in support of Kenyan security deployments as Kenya prepares to lead a multinational peacekeeping mission to Haiti to combat gang violence.
Kenya is ready, Kenya is willing to lead that multinational peacekeeping force that will go to Haiti.
Austin ended his trip on Africa's western coast in Angola, the first U.S. Defense Secretary to ever visit the country. Both nations are hopeful that Angola can dump Russia as its arms supplier and opt for American-made weapons.
Africa deserves better than outsiders trying to tighten their grip on this continent. Africa deserves better than autocrats selling cheap guns and pushing mercenary forces like the Wagner Group or depriving grain from hungry people around the world.
Austin called out African military juntas without naming Burkina Faso, Gabon, Mali, or Niger. It was his most forceful rhetoric since the military removed Niger's elected president from power in July.
When generals overturn the will of the people and put their own ambitions above the rule of law, security suffers and democracy dies. Militaries exist to defend their people and not to defy them. And Africa needs militaries that serve their citizens and not the other way around.
France decided this week to withdraw its military forces from Niger by the end of the year. And analysts say the U.S. could follow suit should the Nigerian military not return the elected government to power.
Niger has become the key hub, the key center of counterterrorism operations for the U.S. and France in the region. And if it's cut back, or if it's reduced, or if it's ended, there is no other assets in the region that the U.S. can use.
The U.S. has so far kept its forces in Niger, but the Pentagon has declined to conduct counter-terror operations with Niger's military. Carla Babb, VOA News, Luanda, Angola.
And now we also take you to Harare, where the Parere Nyatwa group of hospitals says open-heart surgeries that started in June after a 5-year hiatus are going on well. And out of 12 patients operated on, 1 woman died. Cardiologist Kudzai Kanyepi says she decided to stay in Zimbabwe to provide a service for her people despite getting lucrative offers abroad. She speaks to Studio 7's reporter Rutendo Mawere on her journey so far as a female cardiologist.
Ndiri wekutanga muZimbabwe kwanisa kuita specialization iyi. Semudzimai zvakakosha kuti vamwewo vari kutraina sana chiremba vasikana vakura vaone kuti aiwa madzimai anokwanisa kuita zvese. Kazhinji kacho maoperations aya makatarisa kana musub-Saharan Africa anoitwa nevarume. Even imomo muAfrica tiri vashoma, ndingati tiri maybe about 14 or 15 vakadzi vanokwanisa kuita maoperation aya. Saka zvinhu zvinondipa mufaro mukuru kuti ndinokwanisa kuoperata ndichibatsira vanhu vemuZimbabwe neskill yandikakwanisa kuwanawo nekudzidza kwandikakwanisa kuitawo tichikwanisa kubatsira vanhu vanenge vachinidawo maoperation aya.
Chiremba vamwe vari kutotisawo muZimbabwe vachienda kumafuro manyoro. Imi zvii zviri kuita kuti murambe muneso?
Iyo mubvunzo yandinovhunzwa kakawanda and kuidaira kunonetsa. Mwoyo wangu waida kudzoka kuZimbabwe. Yes, ndakakuudzai kuti kana kuCanada kana kuUK vese vaikwanisa kuti uyai mumboshanda nesu, kana even kuSouth Africa kwandikatraina vakati chimbogara mumboshanda nesu. Chakanditi ndidzoke is because vanhu vedu vanonida service iyi. Havasi vese vanokwanisa kuenda kuIndia. And tese takavatiza anozovarapa ndiani. Inini ndakazoitawo hama inozoitawo problem iyi, indatizawo anozosara achirapawo hama yangu ndiani. Ndo zvimwe zvakanditi ndidzoke, asi mhuri yanguwo ichiri kunoku. And kunoku kumba hakuna kumwe kwandichati kumba except muZimbabwe. Saka hapana angatize kumba. Munhu wese anofarira kudzoka kumba.
Tikuona kuti kune vakaitwa operation vazhinji vacho vanhukadzi. Zvoreva here kuti vanhurume havana chirwere ichi munyika?
Aiwa, zvireve izvozvo. Chatinoona kazhinji kacho varume vanozvisimbisa. Anogona kuzvimba makumbo oserera kana after 2 days oti handiri right haachaende kunoona chiremba. Tinokurudzira varume, especially varume vanoti kana kwaita campaign yekuti men's health week kana kuti men's health month muna November vakuenda notsvaga chiremba. Aiwa, varume vane chirwere ichi chemwoyo. Vanogona kutowanda kupfuura vakadzi vacho, asi havasi kutsvagana chiremba. Ngavaende noongororwa before nyaya yacho kana chirwere chacho chanyanya kuenda mberi.
That there was Dr. Kudzai Kanyepi, a female cardiologist, speaking to Studio 7's Rutendo Mawere. Meanwhile, the president of the Medical Women's International Association, Doctors, Eleanor Nwadinobi, speaking on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly in New York, urged African leaders to prioritize women empowerment and implement recommendations reached during these high-level meetings.
I want African leaders to speak up for the continent and for the world, to say time has come for us to recognize that we are one humanity. Time has come for us to understand that health is indeed wealth. No matter how much money you have, when you are unwell, unhealthy, you might find yourself spending the entire financial resources you have. The inequity that we see, racism that we see, colonialism that we see, including neo-colonialism, drives the issues that we have. The violence against women and girls that showed us an exponential rise. Do you know what happened?
What happened?
Women were locked down with their abusers. Women were locked away from their faith, their friends, their family. Women were locked into mental health challenge cages. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, we had a pandemic of violence against women and girls, femicide, 1 in 3 women and girls suffering that violence. So much so that UN Women called it the shadow pandemic. Some called it the pandemic within the pandemic. The United Nations Secretary General made a clarion call. He said, let there be a ceasefire behind the doors of homes. So in order for us to be prepared, whether it's in Africa or outside of Africa, we must make sure we're prepared to bring an end to violence against women and girls. We make sure that there's vaccine equity. We make sure that there's information. We make sure that you don't have people who are not ready to share the patents of vaccines. I could go on and on, but let me stop here.
Thank you so much. That there was Dr. Eleanor Nwadinonobi speaking to me on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly in New York. Now back to our main topic. Women's groups are crying foul over the appointment of only 6 out of 26 cabinet ministers recently appointed by President Emmerson Mnangagwa. The 6 women are Industry and Commerce Minister, Mrs. Tembiso Nyoni, Information, Communications and Technology Minister, Mr. Tenda Mavetera, Sports Minister Ms. Kirsty Coventry, Tourism and Hospitality Minister Ms. Barbara Rozi, Defense Minister Mrs. Opa Muchinguri Kashiri, and Women's Affairs Minister Mrs. Monica Muchangwa. There are several women who were appointed deputy ministers, but women's group says this is far below what they expected in the cabinet. And at the same time, Zimbabweans are waiting anxiously to hear the outcome of the SADC Troika meeting convened online by President Hakainde Hichilema of Zambia, which discussed, amongst many issues, the outcome of Zimbabwe's August elections. Observer missions from SADC, African Union, and European Union said the elections fell short of regional and international standards. The opposition Citizens Coalition for Change, led by Nelson Chamisa, is calling for fresh elections, while ZANU-PF is digging in, saying the election season is over, and we will also discuss this issue. Please stay tuned as we take a brief break. We'll be right back.
In times of change, when the world seems uncertain, and what we hear doesn't reflect what we see, we seek the truth. When we are told only part of the story, we lose trust. In moments of crisis, our dreams, hopes, and wishes for a better tomorrow depends on a free press. At Voice of America, we bring you the stories that people take risks to see. We connect the world and unite it with truth. At Voice of America, we show you the whole picture.
And for those that have just joined us, please note that we are streaming live on all our Facebook pages, VOA Shona, VOA Studio 7, and VOA Ndebele. We're also live on YouTube at VOA Zimbabwe. And to discuss these issues, we're joined by Rosaline Ngube, the spokesperson of the Labor, Economics and Africa Democrats, and Helen Kadirire of the Women's Academy for Leadership and Excellence. Welcome to the program, ladies.
Thank you. Thank you, Liz. Yeah?
Yes, and I will start off with you, Helen Kadirire. Your organization did like a post-mortem of what we saw coming out of these elections. What did you actually analyze and what did you find regarding the amount of women who are actually involved in politics and those that now have leadership positions within the government or parliament?
Our organization looks into issues of leadership. That is our main forte. Mm-hmm. And we have been looking at the number of women who took part in elections, starting from candidate selection, internal party candidate selection, all the way until now when we have the ministers. And we found out that since then the number of women has continued a gradual decline from the years before. We even found out that even for the candidates that were participating, the women candidates that were participating in the 23 and 24 August elections were very, very low as compared to 2018. In this year, we only had 70 women candidates who were contesting, which is very low compared to 2018 when we had over 600. And of those 70, only 21 women managed to succeed in the elections, which is very low. And then come to the cabinet ministers, we only have 6 women out of 23, which is in itself shows a lack of political will from the powers that be were paid to actually let women take up and occupy these leadership positions, despite them being willing and being capable enough to take on the challenges that are put in front of them.
But we've also seen the president recently appointed Mrs. Virginia Mabiza as the first female attorney general for the country with effect from November 1. Is this a step in the right direction or a little bit too late?
Well, there are baby steps. We've noticed, even apart from the appointment of Ms. Virginia Mabiza, we're looking at the local authorities. So far, we have about 6 women mayors and deputies. So this is actually a slow but steady step towards the realization, albeit though the numbers still being very, very low.
Thank you so much. Let me come to you now, Rosalind Ncube of LEAD. Mungaone sei zviri kuitika munyaya dzezvematongerwo enyika takanyanyotarisa nemapositions ari kutorwa nemadzimai.
Yeah, waswera siko mazilas.
Aiwa ndaswera, taurai henyu.
Sezvo tiziva kuti inini ndiri kubva kubato rinotungamirwa nemunhukadzi, tiri kutotarisira kuti vanhukadzi dei vabudirira, vanhukadzi dei vasimukira, hatisi kutombofara nezvakaitika, nokuti tiri kuona kuti pane 21% yevanhukadzi vapinda mupolitics, uyezve Zimbabwe sezvo uchiziva kuti inyika inongotongwa nevarume, tingati patriarchal state nechirungu. Saka tiri kuona kuti vanhukadzi vanovhundusirwa, vanhukadzi hapana anokwanisa kusimuka chaizvo anenge achitya. Ndosaka isusu takazoita yedu bato redu iri rinotungamirwa naPresident Linda Masavira, vachiva ndivo president wedu, national chair redu ndiCaroline, then spokesperson ndini Rosalind Ncube. Saka takaona kuti hazvisi kutoita, tinoda kuti vakadzi vasimuke, nokuti tikuona kuti maelections akapera kuitwa awa kwakangopinda vakadzi 21% chete. Iko zvino chero tikatarisa mucabinet yaPresident Mnangagwa tiri kuona kuti vakadzi vashomesa, for which is tikatarisa pabumbiro romutemo chairo chairo riri kuti zvona tiite hafu which is 50% tese takanyatsoenzana, but tiri kuona kuti just because pane patriarchal state iri kuitika muZimbabwe ndo zvairi. Saka tiri kuona kuti havasi kuda kuti vakadzi vasimukire, havasi kutomboda izvozvo, vari kuda kuti vakadzi varambe vari vashoma ivo vachitonga sevanhurume sokufunga kwavanenge vachiita ivo. Asi tichiti tiri mudhemokrasi, hatisi kuona kuti dhemokrasi yacho iri kushanda papi. Saka ticharwisa kusvika tatopinda tiitewo pamusoro. Tinoda hangu kutenda President Mnangagwa, Jean Mnangagwa, nokupinza kwaazoitawo nyanikiro wokutanga, attorney general wokutanga wechikadzi muno muZimbabwe. Tiri kutoti aiwa idanho rakanaka, but aiwa hazvisirizvo chaizvo zvatiri kuda. Tiri kuda kuti zvinyatsokuwedzerwa chaizvo, uyezve 2028 tiri kutoti izvona tiri kuda kuti Zimbabwe itongwe nomunhukadzi, isazotongwa futi nevarume, nokuti hatisi kuda kuti varume varambe vachitonga. Tiite tichichinjana, pachiti pakapindawo president wechikadzi popinda president wechirume. Saka tiri kuona kutoti izvi
aiwa ndandichakubata ipapo kuti tinzwe zvekwamuri muchitaura nendevele kuti chichi chiri kuita kuti madzimai vakawanda vasanyanyopinda munyaya idzi dzezvematongerwo enyika. Mopindura yenyu ini sindevele.
All right. ya nesindebele sibona ukuthi khona abantu abaningi abesifazana abangeni ku-politics ngani ngokuthi eZimbabwe kulokudlwangu umuntu ongufazi ngaqalisa ukuthi esukumise ilizwi lakhe khulume phezu kwe-politics siyezwa kuthiwa khona hayi leli liwule lo unjani unabantwana lo bayaqalisa ukudinga ukuthi khona vele khona kudala wawuphila njani njengomuntu ongufazi baza kutshela ukuthi walala
Miss Ncube, please hold on. Let me just quickly take a caller. Hello, caller.
Hello.
Tiri kutaura nani muri kupi caller?
Thank you, mani muri kutaura na Joseph Famati muri South Africa.
Taurai tinzwe muri kunzwa iri mudariro inyaya yekuti madzimai havasi kunyatsowana mukana wakati tsvete kuti vapinde munyaya dzezvematongerwo enyika. Imi munozviona seizvi?
Izvozvo zvakashata kudzvinyirira vana madzimai vaifana vari vanhu vanofana kupinda munhau yezvematongerwo enyika nenhau yokuti marights avo anofana kunge aripo nguva dzese panenge pachitaurwa izvozvo.
Asi imi semaonero enyu pane zvamuri kuita here kukudzawo vana kana vechisikana muchivaudzawo kuti aiwa mikana yakaenzana kana vachida kuita zvematongerwo enyika ngavaiti kana hanzvadzi kana mudzimai?
Ichokwadi ndizvo tinotovarayiridza kuti mikana yakaenzana mikana 50-50 asi kuti zvakangofanana chero tikavarayiridza iyo nyika yacho ichitongwa nedemo hapana zvekuzviita nekuti vakadzi vane kodzero dzavo dzekutora zvavanodawo.
Saka remangwana mungada kuona rakamira sei?
Ramangwana taitoti kuda United States neAfrica neEU zvingamira pamusoro pemavhoti atakadirwa aya titozive kuti zvingamirawo sei pane ramangwana.
Aiwa, tinotenda chaizvo mukoma Blessing, muve nezuva rakanaka. Back to you to Miss Ncube, you can carry on in Ndebele.
Yes, ukuthi bayadinga izinto ezimbi wazenzayo kodwa manela bengabantu besilisa abakudingi lokhu ukuthi khona kumbe wawamithisa amankazana amangaki kodwa bayagijimela ukuthi abafazi bonke abafazi futhi bayesaba nokuthi vele bengene ngokuthi noma singaze sibone ku-internet sibili uyabe lokho lithethiswa even kuma-WhatsApp groups tingathi lizama ukuthi khona liyenza iZimbabwe liyifunayo kumbe lifoma ama-group siyabona lokho lithethiswa ngomuntu ongakwaziyo nokuthi uhlala ngaphi uvela ngaphi mbo wawuphila njani kuyakutshela ukuthi awulandoda wena ulayo ekutshela ukuthi wena uliwule wena ungasowule ekutshela izinto eziningi abantu abangafazi abaningi bayesaba vele ukungena leka lonsithi abankazana bayesaba abanye amankazana yethu amadoda abafuzele bathathe bebatshela ukuthi khona ngalokhu yenza into zepolitics mina anguthathi angisathathi lawe izinto zonke zenezo ziyenza ukuthi khona umntwana oyinkazana ebuyele emuva siyathaba sibe ngokuthi ngapha emashingo sibona ukuthi khona kwangena umntwana omncane sibe wayenza umeya wasukuma wayenza umeya ele-25 years sithi khona hayi siyabonga sibi khona apho kusibona umntwana oyinkazana uke wasukuma wafika kulevel yena leyo kodwa abaningi bakhona vele abantu besifazane eZimbabwe bayesaba vele bayesaba ukutshaya bayesaba ukulalwa ngamadoda abo sibili amadoda bayakatshela ukuthi khona once ngapho ukuhamba kuphela uyenze okwe-politics uliwule yabo sikulala amaminista mbe yabo uvula lobobani then ungasabuye emzini wami izinto zonke lezo ziyenza ukuthi khona abantu abesifazana behlale phansi because sibona nje ukuthi khona noma i-50 esikhala ngayo lana noma kuparliament noma ngathi siyayishela ngokuthi ngabalutshwa abantu abangafazi abasukumayo lethi khona hayi sesiyenza i-politics noma ukuthi sesekuma nyenze lami kumbe ugavela mbulwani baye besesaba futhi siyabona ukuthi khona abantu abangafazi ngasivotelani thina sodwa vele uyezwa ukuthi esithi khona hayi unakabani vele angivoteli ngavotela usakabani anti yabona ukuthi khona abantu vele bafuna ukuthi khona bethole ukuthi befundiswe ukuthi khona hayi noma umuntu ongufazi yakwanisa la uyenza khonokho kwanisa umuntu oyindoda.
Thank you, Miss Ncube. Let me take a caller from South Africa. Hello, caller.
Hello.
Makadi caller.
Tinofara makadi.
Aiwa, tiri wadi taura yenyu tinzwe tiri kutaura nani motipo pfungwa dzenyu.
Uri kutaura naTaunda Ndlovu.
Taurai tinzwe.
Ya inini panyaya yanga ichitaurwa iyi maererano nezviri kuitika kuZimbabwe
isusu yedu hatisi kufara sofa kutaura kuno kuti utore vanhu vandori muno munzvimbo yeSouth Africa tiri kutotambura zvisingaiti kana ivo vachinge vari vakuru vacho vachinge vachitadza kuda kuti vange vasingadi kubuda pachinzvimbo pacho varoda kuti tiite sei isusu muno munenge muSouth Africa matiri.
Aiwa, tinotenda chaizvo mukoma vari paSouth Africa po muve nezuva rakanaka.
Aiwa, tinotenda but vanofanira kuti vachizviwawo kuti zvichemo zvedu zvinofanira kufamba sei because tiri kutambura muno matiri muno haisi nyika yedu ino yatiri.
Thank you so much. Coming to you, Helen Kadarire of WALP, you heard what Ms. Ncube was saying there about the reasons why some women might end up not wanting to join politics. From your studies, what have you seen as the major impediments for women coming into politics?
I mean, for women, there are a myriad of challenges why they cannot enter into politics. But we'll look at some of the major ones, and the top being violence. Violence is mostly perpetrated by men, and women, unfortunately, become the victims of it, whether directly or indirectly. Women are always in the firing line of violence, and this is just one of the major reasons why they don't enter into politics, because they end up being afraid of the violent nature that politics has. Another reason is the resources. This year, one of the major reasons why many women failed to actually file their nomination papers at the nomination court was because of the money that was being charged by the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. Many women, even some men, failed to come up with that $1,000 needed. And we also have examples of the women presidential candidates themselves who failed to come up with that. One had to go to court and won, while the other, unfortunately, had her case thrown out. So it meant that we only had one woman candidate for presidential elections this year. Another reason is also because women don't have the time because of our domestic work at home. Most of the time we're at home taking care of the children, taking care of the household, taking care of other vulnerable groups. So they don't have time to attend meetings, to go for rallies, to go and campaign. And these are just some of the reasons why women fail to get into politics.
So from your observation, what can be done as the country awaits the next election, which will be in 2028? Are there any things that can be fixed so that we have more women getting into politics?
I think to fix this, we need the principles to actually have a political will. We had an Indaba before elections, while we had an Indaba before elections, where most of the political parties that were taking part attended. And they actually stated them. All of them stated that unless the principles of the political parties themselves have the will to field equal numbers of men and women, it is not going to happen. It will not going to happen. The numbers will continue going down. As the women's movement, I think now we need to employ new measures, and it's not radical measures, that unless these women are there, we will continue having low numbers. Chief among those, and Walter has been stating this since last year, we need to change our electoral system from first past the post to proportional representation. This will actually safeguard our women from the ills of violence, from the ills of lack of financial resources, and so forth. So we need that to actually happen. New strategies need to employ. We need to actually sit business and come up with new strategies. Otherwise, 2028, we may not have women at all in cabinet and in parliament.
Thank you so much. Thank you there to my guests, Helen Kadarire and also Rosalind Ncube of LEAD. And that brings us to the end of our show. Signing off in Washington, I'm Marvelous Mhlanga Nyahuye saying have a very good night, Zimbabwe.